That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about After Blue, aka Dirty Paradise, the second film directed by Bertrand Mandico, which premiered in competition at the 2021 Locarno Film Festival, and it was released by Altered Innocence theatrically June 3rd, 2022.
What is Bertrand's first film?
He is known for some M83 music videos, by the way, but his first film is an excellent, arguably more subversive film called The Wild Boys from 2017, which also featured cult actress Elina Löwensohn. It's about a group of boys that are put on a ship to kind of be learned a lesson. Think like White Squall, except all of the boys are played by women.
Oh, okay.
It's you might have liked that film better. I am a big fan of After Blue, but it's kind of a B movie as an art house film, which is kind of a weird line to straddle.
Yes. So I thought there were a lot of interesting things about the film, but I did not enjoy watching this. Not one bit. but I think it was also exacerbated by the fact that it was one of those films you kept asking me to watch like repeatedly. Mm-hmm. So I think generally that doesn't work well because then there's a lot of build up to this thing that I've been avoiding. And unfortunately, I feel like this film settled in a spot that really did not catch my attention, but there is a lot about it I think is very well done. The basic story is there's a planet where human females have settled.
The planet's called After Blue.
After Blue. And only people who have ovaries can survive there. People who don't have ovaries, their hair grows inward, which kills them. Mm-hmm. So effectively, there are no men, or there is one guy.
It's a robot.
Oh, it's a robot. Then never mind. There are no men on the planet. Anyway, the film focuses on one teenage girl. Her name is Roxy. And Roxy's walking on the beach one day, and she's confronted or runs into these three other women who are kind of like hooligans. And they start harassing her when the four of them come upon a head in the sand. And they think it's like a severed head. But they realize, like, no, that's a whole ass person buried in the sand. So the three hooligans say, well, let's kill it, like, because they all have guns, like, let's shoot it. But Roxy is, like, not trying to do that. And the person who's buried tells Roxy, if you get me out of here, I'll grant you 3 wishes. And Roxy's like, okay, well, I wish that my friends here would, like, disappear. So she gets that lady out of the sand, and that lady kills those 3 hooligans. Mm-hmm. Okay. So on this planet, there are a lot of rules. Because, you know, like, when we think about, like, oh, if there were only women, it'd be a lot more civilized and whatever. So, of course, like, these women have rules. And if people don't break the rules, like, they get killed. So...
Because they're in a world where they don't want to let evil flourish. So
right.
They cut it off at the roots.
So Roxy gets back to her little village, and she and her mom are confronted by, like, the council, the people in charge. And they're like, you unleashed this woman whose name is Kate Bush. And they say that name like 100 times in this movie.
If you played a drinking game to the amount of times Kate Bush is said in this song, you would be dead.
You would be dead in the first, like, 10 minutes.
You'd be dead in the first...
They say her name so much that I think that was probably the most annoying part of the film. But Kate Bush is like a notorious entity. Okay, so the council says, well, since you unleashed her and she committed these murders, you have to go find her ass and kill her your damn self. And you have no other option. So get to stepping. And don't even bother coming back unless you have her corpse with you.
And notably, the mother, played by Elina Löwensohn, Zora, is the hairdresser.
Which really didn't... I don't know what that had to do with anything.
Well, because it's a hirsute planet, so all these women are growing this hair everywhere.
We can talk about it. Okay, so the bulk of the film is Roxy and her mom on a journey to find Kate Bush. And they are kind of given guidance that she probably is over here somewhere. So they make their little trip, and they bump into several characters, a la like the Wizard of Oz, which doesn't amount to much in my opinion. But everything culminates with another group of ladies saying that they have killed Kate Bush. Because there's like a bounty on Kate Bush. Mm-hmm. But we find out that corpse they've brought is not actually Kate Bush. But Roxy and her mom, specifically the mom, is content with being like, well, good enough for me. She's dead. Let's take the corpse, go back to the village, present it, and be like, we killed Kate Bush. But on the way back to the village, they bump into a lady, and it's Kate Bush. But the mom doesn't know what Kate Bush looks like, but the daughter does. And the daughter, which we can get into, has like very sort of like sexual, has like a sexual like
awakening,
infatuation with Kate Bush. So she knows who this lady is, but she doesn't say anything to her mom. So
in the moment, yeah.
In the moment, and then they leave. And then that's when the daughter says like, oh, well, you had your chance to kill her for real, but you didn't. The end. The film is sort of narrated kind of by Roxy. So we see Roxy sort of talking to someone who's asking her questions. And then the story's built around that. Okay, what did I like? I think the film looks super cool. It's really well shot. I think whoever was in charge of like the set design and like the props did a phenomenal job.
It was shot by Mandico's usual DP, Pascal Granel. But yeah, the production design was giving me how I felt the first time I watched films by Wojtek Haas, like particularly the Hourglass Sanatorium, I think, and kind of that transportive, because this film is more like a vibe, and that's the vibe it is.
I would describe it as a vibe. But yeah, so like the visuals are so impressive, and with what I'm assuming is not the biggest budget, is like super impressive.
This felt like if David Lynch were to remake The Dark Crystal and make it a lesbian dystopic western, is how this movie feels.
Okay, but so I'll just start with what I like. This film did not grab my attention at all. To start with, I did not care for the main girl, Roxy.
Played by newcomer Paula Luna.
Okay, so I'm confused. We're on a planet with only women. So the idea of lesbianism is not really a concept because there is no other option except for if these women want physical intimacy with another person, it will be a woman. So the fact that this young lady is having this sort of sexual awakening, I guess, in conjunction with Kate Bush, it doesn't feel that bold or risque or anything. So then I'm assuming, oh, it's like a coming of age sort of thing. But it really isn't. So then I'm like, oh, maybe we're going to focus on the fact that this young woman, who's seemingly innocent, is having this very strong connection to this murderous woman. Mm-hmm. But that's not really worked out or played out. Okay, then the tone of the film. So it is a vibe, but the mood and the tone threw me off so much because the way it ended up, it would seem that it's supposed to be kind of campy. But the humor is like super, super light. Like a pinch of Splenda.
It's a bit schlocky even, but I kind of like the guns are all named after designers like Paul
Chanel
Smith
and Gucci. But see, so it's just like little interesting weird things, but then the way the characters are acting is kind of weird, but it's not pushing that envelope enough. So then I'm like, oh, well, it would be better if it were just really dark and erotic, because there is a lot of nudity and sort of like there's sexual energy, but it's not sexy, it's not erotic.
Well, Kate Bush is a third eye opened, which also becomes something that is transferred upon Roxy, who's called Toxic by those girls on the beach, which appears over her vagina.
It just doesn't. I guess I'm confused what the purpose of the story is. Like, are we supposed to, like, what's happening?
It's giving us that kind of Joseph Conrad Heart of Darkness vibe where they're looking for this vile, villainous creature in the wilderness. And I do really, Agata Buszek plays Kate Bush, who I also really kind of like how she looks and who's covered in, they keep saying that she's dirty, but it's more like glitter, and has these talons and an arm that's really hairy, which I found very interesting. But I like what it's kind of saying about this planet colonized by women, so this matriarchy, but they have had to adopt kind of masculine tendencies and hierarchies of methods of control, as in bringing guns from Earth and sperm. So they're violating this planet that they can't live in organically. And there's these two other women that are killing everything, Kiefer and Climax, and they're the ones that dig up the corpse that say they killed Kate Bush. They're really decimating the local population. And I also really like that there's these, they're not really sentient, they're almost like zombies, but these creatures, these native creatures called Indiums, like Indians with an M, that have this face that's basically a geode. So there's all of these motifs about inwardness and inner beauty, and then these women are these toxic creatures where everything is growing on the outside. Yeah, it's just, I think there are a lot of interesting things to dig into.
I think what you just described about sort of them like adopting sort of the toxic components of how we see patriarchy in an environment where there are only women is the most interesting part. So I agree with that. And there are so many like those indiums, but then they have no purpose. And then like even all of the fluids that we see in the film, like they're taking a bath, or like people's bodily fluid, like everything's very viscous, which made me think of like vaginal secretions, like super interesting. There's so many interesting pieces when you put it together. It just feels like a really like elaborate stew, but they didn't put any seasoning in it.
Sure.
So then you see it and it's like, ooh, this is going to be so good. And then it's like, oh, they didn't put any, there isn't one flake of any seasoning in this thing.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of texture in the visuals, and especially the music. I'm very thankful to this film because I discovered Compromat, which is this German band that's formed by Vitalik and Sexy Sushi, and which led me to their 2019 album, which is pretty damn good. But it has that kind of vibe also of a giallo film from the 70s, which I really appreciate.
Sure. Yeah.
I also thought, because I feel like there were some changes, because I saw it, I reviewed it out of Locarno last year, but the enduring image I had in my head is of one of those indiums in the end, over the end credits, and they changed it. I'm pretty sure they changed it for what is now the theatrical release in the second time I'm watching it. So, or I might just be misremembering. I don't know. But I did watch it through the end credits again, and I didn't note that Mandico dedicates the film to a handful of like dead, notable like French artists like Maurice Garrel, Edith Scobe, and Guillaume Depardieu. I don't know. I just find Bertrand Mandico kind of a fascinating character. And if you like The Wild Boys, I think you'll definitely dig After Blue. Although, I think maybe Wild Boys is technically a better film, but there's just so much in this that I really did like.
Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's about it. I know that... Oh, that we didn't even talk about the character named Sternberg, who's this lesbian in the woods that kind of has a dalliance with Zora, and I thought she was kind of transfixing.
The mom.
Played by Vimala Pons. She looked like Alanis Morissette to me.
Well, okay, so, because we just skip over a few things. So all the little encounters they have, the first one is this, like, woman who wants a wife, so she's very aggressive with the mom, and then that lady has a daughter who's aggressive with Roxy, and I feel like that didn't really amount to anything. Then they meet this, like, robot who's supposed to be, like, a man, but,
it's
like...
Sternberg designed her after her ex-boyfriends.
I don't know what purpose that served. It was just a lot of, like...
Who has these intestine things that come out. I don't know, that... I think...
I'm not trying to be difficult. I was in a mood when I watched it, and, again, being forced to watch something repeatedly kind of makes the mood worse, so then But I was trying, and nothing about this grabbed my attention except the visuals.
I can appreciate that. I think you had brought up a good point. Maybe Kate Bush should have been the focus, because I think the most striking figure is Agata Buzek as this character.
Because that girl, I would love to know other people. I might actually read some reviews about this film, because it is...
Like mine?
Well, not yours, I already know what you think. But I agree, there were so many interesting things, but the main girl, she just gave me nothing. And then it's like this character whose name they keep saying, Kate Bush.
Well, and it's funny that it's coming out now that Kate Bush has got a resurgence after the Stranger Things.
Yeah, she has a song in the top 10. But I think, like, I wanted more, because we really have no backstory on any of these characters. So it's like, Kate Bush is the most interesting character.
It reminded me of how I feel like Peaches reinvented herself as this teacher in Toronto who became this avant-garde singer who claimed she was from Berlin.
What would you give it?
I did give it 4 out of 5. And
oh, wow.
I really liked it. Yeah.
I'm not going to rate it because I don't think it's fair. If you ask me, like, rating how I enjoyed it, I would give it 0.5 out of 5. But this film does not deserve 0.5 because I think it's very well crafted. It's just not a good story to me. The basic story is so basic, and it amounts to nothing. They don't kill Kate Bush. We don't know what happens when they get back to the village. We don't know how this girl, who the entire journey is about her, like, because we didn't mention that the 3 little hooligans who get killed in the beginning, throughout the film,
are haunting her, yeah.
Those girls' spirits are haunting Roxy. I don't know what purpose that served.
Again,
she didn't kill those girls.
I think
she didn't ask for those girls to be killed, and she didn't like them, or they weren't nice to her. So why is she haunted by them?
I feel like if you look at films from the 70s that were kind of these trippy, drug-induced kind of adventures, and you enjoy them, then I think you'll like After Blue. Again, I think if you aren't kind of fascinated by those kind of films with that kind of a vibe, you'll probably be repulsed or repelled by this film, and maybe in like a couple decades people would return to it and like that. It's very much kind of like the new Cronenberg. I think it's very much of a film that has to be appreciated outside of its time.
You know what would have caught my... I already said this to you earlier today. I think if we were having like a party at the house and it's like nighttime and like lights are dim, candles lit, we're playing music, and then you have this movie playing on the big screen but with no volume, I think it would be more interesting that way.
That and Fantastic Planet.
Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.